Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home when Jesus is my portion? I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me.
Hello, welcome to our Bible study. My name is Clint McElroy, and today we'll be in 2 Samuel chapter 22. We will be meeting today at 10 a.m., so please join us if you can. Hope to see you there. If you're sick in any way, please don't come to the auditorium, but instead stay home and enjoy the streaming service. We'll also be meeting at 9 a.m. for classes, so please join us for those as well. You're welcome to join us in the auditorium to watch this class on the large screen there if you care to. We want to make everyone aware that we have these English Standard Version Bibles available from the World Bible School. If you'd like to have one, please contact our church office and we'll make arrangements to get you one. We have many on our sick list, and I will forego announcing the list of sick going forward because it makes it very difficult to re-show the class material with the old announcements in it. But that said, we do extend our sympathies to the family of Dr. Alexander Weir, who passed away a couple of weeks ago. His service at the Eastside congregation will be sorely missed. Our sick list is long, so please refer to our bulletin for more information. We're so very thankful that the Lord has answered our prayers in regards to so many who have been sick and restored, and for the great rain that He's given us. We realize that some are suffering because of the rain, and we continue in prayer for those who are suffering because of that. We're mindful of the story of the two men on the road to Emmaus who were joined by a third man on the way. When they got to their destination, Jesus revealed that He was that third man and left their company. As they reflected on His presence with them, they realized that there had been a burning in their hearts while He was with them. It's that burning that they had in their hearts in the presence of Jesus that we hope to kindle in our own hearts as we draw closer to the Lord through a study of His Word. We also want to remember the admonitions of Leviticus chapter 19, to be holy for the Lord our God is holy. And we want to remember the admonitions of the story of Rehoboam, the story of Jeroboam, and the story of the prophet that came to Jeroboam. Rehoboam listened to the advice of young, inexperienced advisors who told him something that made sense to him, and following that advice led directly to the split of the kingdom, and the northern tribes separated from the southern tribes, and Judah was all that was left to Rehoboam to lead. The northern tribes had been promised to Jeroboam while Solomon was still on the throne by God. And when Solomon passed, Jeroboam, who had been living in exile in Egypt, came back and took over the leadership of those northern tribes. Instead of following the instructions that he had been given by God, he chose instead to raise up high places in the mountains because he feared the people going into Jerusalem to worship God there rather than stay in Israel. And he told the people that they should worship there the God that led them out of Egypt. And he showed them calves made of gold and said that this was the God that led them out of Egypt. And he placed these idols at these high places that he'd set up in the mountains, in multiple places. And he created a false priesthood to lead the worship there in the mountains. And this perverted the people of Israel in their worship before the Lord for centuries, from that time until the time of Christ. And this was an abomination before the Lord. But the Lord didn't just let him do it. He sent a prophet, and that prophet came to Jeroboam and told him that he was messing up. Jeroboam didn't listen to the prophet, and he went ahead and did what he wanted to do. But that prophet had also been given instruction, and he had received it from the Lord and was carrying it out as he'd been instructed. And when he was on his way home, when it was all but complete, he started on the way home. And instead of going home as the Lord had told him, he was met in the way by another prophet from Israel who wanted the pleasure of his company. And that prophet told him a lie, told him that he was told by God that he should come have lunch with him. This sounded good to the prophet that had come to talk to Jeroboam. So he went and had a meal. And before he got up from that meal, the Lord told him that he would forfeit his life because he had not followed the instruction of the Lord. And indeed, on his way home, he was killed by a lion. This is a harsh story. It's a very difficult story to understand. In our way of thinking, this man was a victim of a lie. But in fact, the Lord looked at it differently. The Lord looked at it as someone who did not trust in his word and follow the instruction that he had given. He believed a lie instead, one that sounded good to him, and we must be on guard not to do the same thing. We must remember that if we fall prey to a lie, we may suffer the same fate as this prophet who listened to the lie. That's why we study God's word, so that we will know the truth when we hear it, and that more importantly, we will know a lie when we hear it. When we hear something that sounds good but is not in accord with what the Lord has told us in his word, we can rest assured that it is not from God. No matter how wonderful it may sound and seem, we must be on guard against it. So I hope that you will join me now as we enter into this study of 2 Samuel chapter 22. It's a long chapter, a song of David. Perhaps we'll find a word of encouragement there, but most importantly, I hope that you'll find that the things we study together are true and in accord with God's word. 2 Samuel chapter 22 from the English Standard Version. And David spoke to the Lord the words of this song on the day when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge, my Savior. You save me from violence." Verse 4. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. For the waves of death encompassed me, the torrents of destruction assailed me, the cords of Sheol entangled me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called upon the Lord, to my God I called. From his temple he heard my voice, and my cry came to his ears. Verse 8. Then the earth reeled and rocked, the foundations of the heavens trembled and quaked, because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils, and devouring fire from his mouth. Glowing coals flamed forth from him. He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He was seen on the wings of the wind. He made darkness around him his canopy. Thick clouds, a gathering of water. Out of the brightness before him, coals of fire flamed forth. Verse 14. The Lord thundered from heaven. The Most High uttered his voice, and he sent out arrows and scattered them, lightning and routed them. Then the channels of the sea were seen. The foundations of the world were laid bare. At the rebuke of the Lord, at the blast of the breath of his nostrils, he sent from on high. He took me. He drew me out of many waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy, from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. Verse 19. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. The Lord dealt with me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands. He rewarded me, for I have kept the ways of the Lord and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his rules were before me, and from his statutes I did not turn aside. I was blameless before him, and I kept myself from guilt. And the Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness in his sight. Verse 26. With the merciful you show yourself merciful. With the blameless man you show yourself blameless. With the purified you deal purely. And with the crooked you make yourself seem tortuous. You save a humble people, but your eyes are on the haughty to bring them down. For you are my lamp, O Lord, and my God lightens my darkness. For by you I can run against a troop, and by my God I can leap over a wall. This God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord proves true. He is a shield for all those who take refuge in him. Verse 32. For who is God but the Lord? And who is the rock except our God? This God is my strong refuge and has made my way blameless. He made my feet like the feet of a deer and set me secure on the heights. He trains my hands for war so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have given me the shield of your salvation, and your gentleness made me great. You gave a wide place for my steps under me, and my feet did not slip. I pursued my enemies and destroyed them, and did not turn back until they were consumed. Verse 39. I consumed them, I thrust them through, so that they did not rise. They fell under my feet. For you equipped me with strength for the battle. You made those who rise against me sink under me. You made my enemies turn their backs to me, those who hated me, and I destroyed them. They looked, but there was none to save. They cried to the Lord, but he did not answer them. I beat them fine as the dust of the earth. I crushed them and stamped them down like the mire of the streets. Verse 44. You delivered me from strife with my people. You kept me as the head of the nations. People whom I had not known served me. Foreigners came cringing to me. As soon as they heard of me, they obeyed me. Foreigners lost heart and came trembling out of their fortresses. The Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and exalted be my God, the rock of my salvation, the God who gave me vengeance and brought down peoples under me, who brought me out from my enemies. You exalted me above those who rose against me. You delivered me from men of violence. Verse 50. For this I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations, and sing praises to your name. Great salvation he brings to his king, and shows steadfast love to his anointed, to David and his offspring forever. Okay, last time we read out of chapter 21, following the incident with the rebellion of Sheba. The circumstances in the land was that there had been a famine for several years, and David sought the Lord to find out why there had been a famine. And the Lord said there is blood guilt on Saul and his house because he put the Gibeonites to death in verse 1 of chapter 21. So David called the Gibeonites and spoke to them and asked them if there was anything that he could do to address this blood guilt that the Lord said was being visited upon the people because of Saul's violation. And the Gibeonites said there was really nothing that they could think of. He couldn't really do anything against Saul because Saul was dead, and they didn't really want to take any monetary or financial advantage because of what had happened. But David pressed and said, what can I do? I need to do something because the Lord he didn't explain it to him, but the rationale in his mind was that the Lord was holding Israel guilty for Saul's violation. And they said, the man who consumed us and planned to destroy us so that we should have no place in all the territory of Israel, let 7 of his sons be given to us so that we may hang them before the Lord at Gibeah of Saul. And David said he would do that. Now David wanted to spare Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, because of his love for Jonathan and his love for Saul to a lesser extent. He didn't want to give up Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth had sat at his table for so many years. So he went to find other offspring of Saul to provide as this ransom. And he found the sons of Rizpah, 2 sons, Armoni and Mephibosheth, another son called Mephibosheth, and 5 sons of Merab, that I have a footnote, might be Michal, the daughter of Saul, whom she bore to Adriel, the son of Barzillai, the Maholathite. So we know that Michal had been given in marriage to Laish, and that when David was made king over Israel, finally, one of the things he requested was that he be restored with Michal, who had been promised to him in marriage by Saul. And so she had been taken from Laish and brought to David. And there had been animosity between Michal and David for the rest of their relationship. Now, we're not explained in all detail what that animosity was rooted in, but if this was indeed Michal rather than Merab, who gave up 5 sons, those 5 sons would have been the sons of someone other than David. So it would have been Laish. So the name difference here is odd to me because there is such proximity in the same book. If this is Michal, why didn't they call out the name Michal and Laish rather than the names provided here? Perhaps Michal had been given in marriage to some other man as well. I don't know. and I don't really care that much, but it is strange to me that this name is listed here with this footnote. That gave David 7 men to give to the Gibeonites. The Gibeonites took these men and hanged them on the mountain before the Lord, and all 7 men perished together in the first days of the harvest, at the beginning of the barley harvest, it says at the end of verse 9. Now Rizpah was upset by this. She took sackcloth and went out and spread it on the rocks before the men, and she drove off all the animals that would come to eat for the bodies. And when David heard that Rizpah had done this, he was moved by it, and he went and recovered the bones of Saul and Jonathan from the men of Jabesh Gilead. If you remember, they had gone and taken the bones from the Philistine city where they had been taken as trophies, and they had buried them in their town. So now David had gone and recovered these bones from Jabesh Gilead and brought them and took these bones, these bodies of the 7 from this location, and took them and buried them and showed due respect to Saul and his family, now all past. And once he had done this, it says at the end of verse 14, God responded to the plea for the land. This is very interesting to me, as I've stated in the last lesson. God responded to something that happened between the Israelites and this group of people in a very early time. This agreement had been made with the Gibeonites against the instruction of the Lord, and yet the people were held to it. And now this King Saul had violated this agreement and done this terrible thing and killing all these Gibeonites. And even though God had killed Saul and most of his family on the day that Saul passed, he still held a blood guilt against the people because of what Saul had done. This is an incredibly interesting thing to me, and I do believe these kinds of things play out in our world today. We don't like to acknowledge those kinds of things, but if we gave just a moment of consideration to current events and the things that our American country, our American government has promised peoples in the past and not stood by, how much shame and reproach that's brought to our country and the problems we have today because of it, I think it's worthy of some consideration that there are due responsibilities to obligations made by our ancestors on our behalf, and we should give some consideration long and hard before we go against something we've made a promise to, even if it was not necessarily ratified by our Congress in accordance with the due process of our laws. I'm remembering one instance in particular, which I don't want to share because I think it's self-evident what that is. But when the nation has made a promise to a people and then we don't stand by that promise, there's going to be a consequence to that, especially when, in not standing by our word, a great number of other people die and suffer because of it. And that is going on in the world right now. And I don't agree that the agreement that was made should have been made, but it was made. And there was a whole people that did something because we promised to do something that we are now not standing beside, although it would have significant consequences should we do that. There was a promise given, and now it is not being upheld yet again by our government, and this disappoints me greatly. That said, and going on, there was a time of war between the Philistines and David and Israel, and there's a list of giants that are listed here at the end of chapter 21 who died at the hand of David's army, and even a story about how David fell prey in battle to an ambush, and he was told by his military that he would no longer be accompanying them in battle. So this is an important thing in the life of David. It shows, I think, his age, and it's an interesting thing to me that David was told this by men who, we have stories of these same men, almost the entire career of David, being involved with David. So their age is also a factor. But whatever happened there, the explanation that was given was that you shall no longer go out with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel at the end of verse 17. So we see that this logic would be obvious if David fell in battle. The strike to the morale of the people would be tremendous. They would have very difficult time moving forward in any battle in which David was wounded or died. So not giving any consideration to the fact that God stood with David, these men said that they didn't want David out there anymore. But there are a list of, again, 4 giants listed here, given by, not all of them have names. The names that are given here are not consistent with the names as recounted in 1 Chronicles, and I spoke at length about that in my last lesson as well. The list in 1 Chronicles, of course, was written considerably in a time considerably later than these recorded here. Now, just as a footnote, if you go read the preface to 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, it says that these stories were written down at an earlier time. And I have no contention that the material that they're sourced from is from periods of time certainly earlier than the book of 1st and 2nd Chronicles. But in all rational consideration, the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, which were all considered the book of kings and earlier names, these books end with the captivity of Judah. So these were most likely a compilation of the stories of the original books of the Annals of the Kings that had been consolidated into these forms, possibly at the earliest point of the captivity. And then we see Chronicles being written toward the end of that captivity, or even after the return of the people to Jerusalem, to Judea, to try to rebuild and reestablish Israel there. So we see that these books were written for similar purposes, in my opinion, but at significantly different points in time and for significantly different audiences and potentially slightly different purposes, even though generally they are obviously a recounting of the most significant stories of the various kings of Israel and Judah. So I say all that just to footnote that I assert that these are not the books of Kings referred to in both these books and in other places that we see in the Old Testament, that there must have been other books, and maybe there's documentation on those, I don't know. Again, it's not something that I'm that tremendously interested in. Obviously, I would have studied it up on it a little bit more. But the fact that these are not the original books of the Annals of the Kings is important to me, because the details recorded here, if these are not the original, are then copies of information that was in original sources. And as such, they may not be as accurately recorded here as they should be. I don't know that, but it is interesting to me that there is an inconsistency, such a significant inconsistency in this story of the giants at the end of chapter 21 and 1 Chronicles chapter 20. That said, going on into chapter 22, this is a song of David, not necessarily from this time frame, but certainly significant because of the enemies that David had dealt with. I have the feeling that this song was written by David at the time that he was delivered from Saul and established as king over Israel, because of the first couple of verses there. But again, it may not be, or may have been revised by David at various points. Many of these you recognize as phrases from various psalms, so there is that. I'm not going to go over the whole song here because it is a very long song. So we'll use our review time next week to go over general points over chapter 22 before we go on into chapter 23. But I did want to get it read today, and I think I've accomplished that, hopefully without any errors. So I hope you receive some edification from David's glorification of God for his deliverance from his enemies. And the great wonders that God did for David are always worthy of consideration. David is certainly one of the great men of the Bible, and we should always be looking to his example in both positive and negative ways. Of note, just before I leave it, David doesn't refer to his shortcomings much in these verses of his song. So that is of interest to me, and also maybe, and it also may be a clue as to when he exactly wrote the song. He may not have had reference to some of the things that he received punishment from God for. So, that said, I hope you found a word of encouragement in today's study. We will be meeting today at 10 a.m., so please join us if you can. Hope to see you there. If you're sick in any way, please don't come to the auditorium, but instead stay home and enjoy the streaming service. God bless. Have a great week.
The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. Therefore I will hope in him.
My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. My soul magnifies the Lord.
salvation be exalted. Jesus Christ, He died for me.
Jesus Christ, He died for me.
And He took away my sin. I will live with Him for eternity.
I know the Lord lives,
And blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted.
I know the Lord lives,
And blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted.
I know the Lord lives,
And blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. The Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. I will